Hey, welcome to the basement. This is just a share out that was probably destined for my advisory during this remote learning period at some point, but since we were challenged to offer a message to the students, here's my message to anybody who is locked down right now, staying safe at home with family, to maybe find a new interest, and that new interest could be one of mine, which is hobby board gaming. Now, I do want to point out that the internet right now is trying to convince us that we all have to get something new to do or do something new with all the extra time that we have. So I do want to remind you, especially since I am a teacher of students and families who are incredibly busy, myself included, stop trying to be productive. It is enough to do what we have been asked to recreate school as it was. We have to remind ourselves that we're not actually recreating school as it was. So to ask ourselves to start creating something new, creation being the thing that is hardest for the human mind to do when we rank the skills, creation is at the top. That's not what I'm asking. What I am suggesting is that somebody else has done some wonderful creation, and these are good things to do with your Chromebook off, your phones off for a little, since the only way that we have to communicate and learn right now is through phones and Chromebooks. A great way to spend some time with the people that you are cooped up with right now is to break out a board game, but somebody else has done the hard part of coming up with these great ideas. Plus, these are readily orderable from Amazon, so you don't have to venture out into a store to buy them. You could also go to any number of more independent online retailers to get a copy if supporting Amazon during this time isn't something that you are interested in. That's fair as well. Also, I should point out that I'm trying to keep it casual, not work too hard on this. Some of these might be out of print, and therefore their prices could be more extreme than I suggest. I'm just not going to be able to do that research right now. So let's start with a pile of games that are easily accessible to anyone in your family so that you could get started without a lot of rules learning. Because when it comes to the stack of board games in our house, the reason why we usually have some Monopolies, some Risks, some Chutes and Ladders, and some Scrabble is because those have been standards in American culture for generations. And so there's always someone who knows the rules. So one of the hurdles to getting into new board games is that everybody has to learn the rules. So let's start with this pile because there's a lot of games that are very familiar to other games that you've already played, but they're different enough that you'll be excited by the new opportunities. For those of you who maybe have some middle school siblings, or even elementary school siblings, I've played this with my 4-year-old. This is King Domino. It's a domino game, but instead of putting dots to dots, pips to pips, if you will, the dominoes are little pieces of kingdom. We've got our swampland. We've got some places to put some sheep, and it's really just dominoes, but you're also building a little kingdom. Everybody gets to start building their own little castle. Some versions come with these little cute cardboard castles for you to play with as well. So that looks like dominoes, but it's also something else. This is a fairly simple game to grasp. I don't know if I know of a game that it mimics, but it's called Splendor. It's really kind of a set collection and symbol matching game, so it might look like more than that, but at its heart, maybe it's just rummy. What's really satisfying about it is it comes with these really chunky chips, which everyone gets to feel like they are some sort of exotic noble conducting business in the days of the Renaissance with that game there. Another game that sort of has a little bit of a Renaissance look and feel to it is a game called Azul. It's a little bit Scrabble feeling in the sense that it comes with tiles that you lay down on a board. This is a genre of gaming called abstract games, which means what you're doing is really just a puzzle and there's just enough theme to justify the existence of a board. So you're taking these beautiful colored tiles and arranging them in a pattern, and instead of letters, you're trying to get rows for points in these pictures. The reason why that game is a lot of fun is because at first it seems like a pretty simple, oh, I like that tile, I'm going to take it, but it actually is kind of cutthroat, because when you take a tile from the pile in the center, it may force someone else playing the game to take tiles that they don't want and create a real mess of their plans. This game starts to upgrade the understanding of strategy a little bit, but it's a classic in the genre. It's a game called Carcassonne. This is a great two-player game, so if you just have one other person that would be into playing games with you, it's another game where you are building a board as you play it, or I should say placing tiles, like Azul was. Whenever you place a tile, you get to put a little meeple, and depending on the type of tile that you place, that meeple takes on a medieval role in medieval France. So this meeple, if you put it on a castle, becomes a knight. If you put it on a road, it becomes a thief. If you put it in a monastery, it becomes a monk. But the most important thing you do is you lay it on its side, and sometimes it is a farmer. And the real winner of this game is the kingdoms that control the most farmers. So this is a game that has a lot of strategy if you're into strategy. The rules aren't too complex, but the winner is going to be the person who is thinking deeper and long term and pulls off the surprise at the end, because you realize, I did not know that they had that many farmers laying down out there. This next game is called Dominion. It's from a genre of game called a deck builder, which if you've never played a deck builder before, that can be a different experience. It comes with a ton of cards. In the game, you're going to choose 10 of these card types to play with, and on your turn, you can buy them, and they go into your deck. And every time you play, you draw, play, buy, draw, play, buy, and your deck builds with the cards of your choosing. So the satisfaction of making decisions and buying stuff is there, but that's not really the key to winning. The key to winning is managing the mess that you're making, because eventually your deck will become unwieldy if you're putting the wrong stuff in there, because you are still playing with the luck of the draw, and if you get a bad hand, you get a bad hand. But unlike a card game where everyone's dealing with the same 52 cards, that draw, well, you influenced it. You were making the decisions to decide what cards go in there. So if it turns out badly, you only have yourself to blame. All right. We're going to go to the fun stuff in a moment, but let's take a brief tour of these two games. Two very different, more challenging games. So these are more challenging, but I want to show Power Grid. This is one of my all-time favorites. And the reason is because I feel like this is the game that you could plop down in a family that enjoys Monopoly to show them the way that Monopoly should actually run. The trivia of Monopoly is it was designed by a woman in the 1930s to show how cutthroat American monopolies were, and it was supposed to be not fun with that one person that plays all night and gets all the money. Yet we love it because, I guess, America. But take a look at this game, and it, first of all, is like, look at how big this is. It's so satisfying to have this giant board. But down here, okay, good. Down here, there's a market, a commodities market. And so we have coal, we have oil, we have radioactive fuel, nuclear energy, and then recycled garbage. And you're building a network of power plants. And why I love this game and why it works so well is because if you have a whole bunch of coal-powered plants, you are going to buy a whole bunch of coal. And what at first the market starts over here at first, a barrel or a pile or whatever you call it of coal, it's cheap, but as you swallow up that market, you're going to drive the prices up on yourself, and then suddenly the person that is running maybe what was once a more expensive fuel, but they were the only one doing it, they come from behind because they are monitoring the market and changing out their energy source when the time is right. So it's an economics game that has this little economic engine inside it. Instead of a dice roll like Monopoly, you actually have to watch the changing market conditions and adjust. You can also auction for this, so there's bidding. So some of the stuff that we really like about Monopoly, where you're like trading properties and you feel like, oh, I'm a real estate broker, you get that feeling with Power Grid, but you're actually making those decisions for real. This game is complex because it has two parts called Galaxy Trucker, but the reason why it's fun is that you're building a spaceship. This is the third round, the biggest spaceship, and you're building this spaceship with all sorts of goofy parts. And these parts, we've got cargo and engines and lasers, and so the first part of the game is that these parts are in a pile, and it's real time, so everyone is grabbing their tiles and trying to build a spaceship that works. And then the second part of the game is that there is a racetrack, and you race what you built. There's 3 rounds, so 3 races, and every time you race what you built, I'm not going to be able to find it, but there's a little track to see who is leading that race. Space is unkind to your new truck that you just built, and part of the fun is competing, but also knowing it's not really your fault when a meteor strikes your Galaxy truck and blows it to smithereens, making you pay the company back gobs and gobs of space bucks, but everyone laughs because they know, hey, it wasn't your fault. Meteors happen, and the pressure made you create a goofy spaceship that didn't work. So complex, but a lot of laughs and just like really different. So you'll notice that a couple seconds back there, my body froze because my computer fell asleep while I was recording it. And, you know, I aced the presentation, so I don't want to trash the video, but in the spirit of what I said, that creation takes a lot of energy, and the school day is long over, and it's time to start the weekend and maybe play some of these games. I'm not going to re-record. So the rest of the video is just going to be the original audio, and I already took the camera down, as you can see. And I'll just put up pictures of the other games that I talk about. Whoops, I'm not a pro. All right. Let's talk about cooperative games. This is a cooperative game, meaning that everybody is playing against the system. This is called Forbidden Island. It is a 4-player game where you're trying to rescue the treasures off of this island before the island sink. Really simple game. It is cooperative, so if you're a family that avoids these games because there's some person who's too competitive, you can play this game with them. It also says ages 10 plus, but I think you could go even younger. This is a pretty easy game to digest, so if you have a wide age spread in your siblings, this is a great choice. And if you've never played a cooperative game before, it's really fun to be able to have a family game night where you're all on the same team. You also can adjust the difficulty, so as a family, if this becomes a game night, you could have a scoreboard that you keep. How did we do against the island this week? So if you've never done cooperative, that's a good one to start with. It's by a designer named Matt Leacock, and he is probably most famous for the game called Pandemic. Whether or not your family would be into that depends on probably your family's sense of humor. It is a good game, but maybe now it's not the time. Okay, let's go back to another 2-player game because I'm sure I'll get some of my colleagues watching this as well. This is a great husband-wife game, but it is pretty cutthroat. Every decision that you make affects the decision of the person playing across from you. So it is very strategic, not really luck-based, even though it is a card game. So there's luck involved in what you draw, but it's still your choice what you do with it. The reason why I'm putting it out there is because it's just so small, so simple. It's a good, quiet evening 2-player game. In this time, it might be just the ticket. This is a really different kind of game. It's Clue, only it's Clue mixed with a little bit of a Ouija board. It's called Mysterion. If you have a large family that's staying home with each other, this might be a good choice because it's up to 7 players. One person plays a ghost, and you get to hide behind this board, which is pretty cool. On the other side of that is going to be a mystery. Again, a la Clue, there's going to be a place that the murder was done, there's going to be a weapon that was used, and a culprit. But what is happening is that the ghost knows who did the crime, but the only way they have to communicate is with these cards that are covered in abstract art. And so they will be showing the person who is investigating, the family, the rest of the players, these pictures, and this is all you have, and you'd look at this and be like, I see a jar, so maybe they killed him in the kitchen? I don't know. It's really interesting because it has that element of mystery solving, but it's also a little bit of an insight into the psyche of the people that you know, because you'll also start to say, like, what does a jar mean to you, the person who's playing the ghost? If you want to get really into it, the ghost can also not speak during the whole game, so that the only way they can say whether you're on the track or not is to knock with a yes or a no. So that can add a little bit of drama if you start getting good at the rules of that game. For something of more of a Jenga flair, right? A Jenga game comes from the world of dexterity games, tabletop games that actually involve some physical skill. There's a game called Flip Ships, which is a mix between Space Invaders, that old video game that had the aliens that go doot 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 doot, and Tiddlywinks. And so every person takes on a squadron of spaceships, and you will build a cardboard mothership and a platoon of cards that are fighting you, and you put the chip at the end of the table and attempt to flip it onto your targets. It's another cooperative game, but very different and random. I've found that in order to be into this game, you have to let go of wanting to win. Now, you want to win, that's what makes it fun, but flipping is an action that is deliberately designed to be hard. Don't expect to get good at it. Let's talk about Escape, the Curse of the Temple. This is a real-time game. It even comes with a soundtrack, so you have to play to the sounds of jungle drums and weird sort of stuff like that. Everyone's rolling dice at the same time, trying to get the right combo to move your adventurer through the temple. You're all shouting at each other and say, like, I need a key, someone help me, come find, get a key. This is also a game that you could play by yourself if you were really so desperate. Almost done. This is probably where I start to break the rules. These are some games that are a lot heavier and would require some time and some learning, but I have to share them as a humanities teacher. Here's Twilight Struggle, a 2-player game. One player plays the USSR, the other player plays the United States, and you manage the entire history of the Cold War. And you manage this little doomsday countdown clock together, and there's a scenario where you play your political cards well enough that the United States wins. There's the possibility that the USSR comes out of the other side of the Cold War winning, but if this ever goes to nuclear fallout, you both lose. This is a really complex game. The strategy cards are very deep, but it's kind of interesting because the strategy cards, I'll see if I can grab one quick enough, they are all actual historical events that have been translated into math. And that's what we're looking at here. I may be a humanities teacher, but behind me is really a big pile of math problems. All of these are based on statistics and probabilities and algorithms, and so once you figure out the math problem, you figure out the game. And that's what makes puzzles so much fun. And in this time of remote learning and remote living, I'm going to throw Dungeons & Dragons out here as well. Again, for the player, if you know this system, who is the Dungeon Master, it probably is a new hobby, and maybe spending too much time creating would not be a good idea, but if you already have stuff, I just throw this out here because right now a lot of companies are trying to support us in this time, and this is definitely one of them. A lot of tabletop simulators are offering their services for free right now, so that if you are playing at home, your friends can join on via webcam and share games with each other, which is one of the best things that human beings have learned how to do. I'm really into games. I don't know if that was obvious or not, and if just one family tries to spend one night around the table during this time, getting to know each other better with cardboard instead of silicone and all the other stuff that silicon, I should say, and all the other stuff that makes up the other stuff that I like. I like my technology, but I like my games too. And I like you guys. So I hope you get to play a game.